Hey, good day. Here is a needed course. We are currently, a lot of times it happens in the cycles we go through in a seller's market. And uh, when that occurs, we often are in multiple offer situations. So many of you have been asking for and are wanting advice on a sales price escalation addendum. There are many of them out there floating around. One is not been created currently from Florida Realtors. However, one is being created, we believe, but it won't be happening anytime like tomorrow. We wanted to get you this one. We have seen some of the very basic ones that are out there, escalation addendums, and which are fine, but I've seen some dangers in those. Here is a couple things I want to point out. We're going to make this available through paperless pipeline under the optional contract forms. You'll see it. I'll go show you where that is at the end here. And then also and it's populatable, so you can actually edit it and put it in. And then also, it takes a little bit of time, but it will be up on Form Simplicity and Transaction Desk eventually. We have to wait for them to load it for us, but they will be there under company-wide forms. But in the meantime, teaching this class, and I'm going to have this marked up version, and I want to go through it, try and be as quick as I can and highlight some areas of risk. There will be an attachment to this marked up version below this class, so you can reference it if you like, and read some of my remarks and comments. Let me just start up here. It says the form is not perfect. The form is not created by Florida Realtors. We have heard that Florida Realtors process creating a form. Once they deal, we'll make a determination of whether we should switch to its use and recommend if that's going to be the case. But in the meantime, you can find this on forms or on paperless pipeline immediately, and then in Form Simplicity and Transaction Desk eventually. Then I said, listen to the audio on this. This form has been made along with an offer, and you be sure to discuss this. So please, please, please don't be oversimplified when you're explaining this to a buyer. Pay particular attention to the fact that the escalations and the maximum sale price in this form, and this is the way it should be, are all based on the net to seller. I have that, if you see that here, on the net to seller, I have that in caps. I will discuss this example and illustrate how it's going to make a difference in what that might look like for your offer, and how your offer may end up, the actual sale price may end up if your buyer, you and the buyer are not fully aware that we're talking about a net amount, and net being defined as sale price minus seller concession. So if you're offering 200, but asking for 5,000 in closing costs, the net to seller is 195. And so when we talk about escalations, we want to talk about escalations that are based upon the net and also are being forced, escalations being triggered, if you will, by another offer that has a higher net, not just a higher offer. And it's very important to help protect your buyer. All right, so pretty straightforward. You put the actual offer date on here, the date it was dated, between Billy buyer and Susie seller, and we go through. Let's read this first paragraph. The parties agree the contract is modified as follows. In the event that prior to seller's ratification of the contract, the seller receives one or more additional written bona fide. Now, what am I note up here? Make sure your buyers understand how difficult this is going to be. I've seen a lot of chatter on the social media pages about how do you know that it's really an offer? Well, you don't. I mean, there's huge risk here. Jim and I were discussing whether or not I'd like to see the percentage of escalations that end up at the maximum every time. And I think it's very high because there is no way, and I don't think there's any legal remedy to go back through. Although the reason I like this form, we're going to see at the end, it forces the seller to actually put some dates and some numbers and some names and another agent that actually made the offer and so on and so forth in there as the reason why the escalation was triggered. So bona fide, just explain to them that, hey, look, a bona fide offer, there is no legal remedy. We're not going to be able to subpoena records, I don't think. And I guess they could try. They could do anything they want. But to make sure that the offer that triggered an escalation truly was legitimate and not just somebody else in their office writing up an offer so you can trigger the escalation, or their sister-in-law writing up an offer so they can trigger an escalation. Just warn them that that does exist, and we'd love for people to be up and up, but unfortunately that's not always the case. So another bona fide offer to purchase property with terms acceptable to the seller, and from which the seller will receive a higher, look at this, net contract sale price, contract sale price less any seller concessions than the net reflected in this offer. Then this contract net sale price shall automatically increase by, here's the escalation amount, $500. Look at my note up here. One should always utilize net as the basis of the escalations and how offers are compared. This is the correct way for a seller to compare offers when only the price is under consideration. With that said, realize that a seller does not have to escalate on an offer. They may choose a cash offer rather than a financed offer, even if the financed offer has an escalation that would raise the net price higher than the offer. Just because your buyer can't say, but my escalation said I wanted to raise it. But if they decided they wanted cash instead of your escalated financed offer, they have every right to do that. So understand that. Okay. Anyway, so realize we're talking about net. Here's the escalation amount. In my example, I'm saying we're going to escalate at increments of $500 above any other offers net to seller. Not to exceed, red note here, net sale price of $200,000. That is the net sale price. So let's say you were offering 190 with 5,000 in. You're asking offering 190 with 5,000 in buyers in sellers closing costs, seller contribution of buyers closing costs. Sorry. All right. So 190 minus 5,000, 185 was your net. If you went to escalate, and it ended up that your net of 200 won the day, the actual sale price is going to be 200 plus 5,000, because we're talking about a net figure here. Just realize that. It's the only way to do it. So please, please, please pay attention before you end up with a higher sale price than what you thought the buyer was going to get. Notice I even have an arrow here. The maximum price in this form is net. Listen to the audio. The buyer's offer is asking for closing cost assistance, and the closing cost assistance will be added to the amount here to increase the actual sale price. Be sure to explain this to the buyer and place correct amount in here. So if your buyer wanted to end up the most on the actual sale price of 200,000, then you would, and they were asking for 5,000 in closing costs, then you would need to put a net sale price of 195 in here as a maximum that your buyer would be willing to go to, especially if they had to have the closing cost assistance. All right. So I'm going to go through an example here in a minute. In the event of an increase in the sale price under this system, you got two boxes to check. When we see the blank one, it'll be a little clearer. You check the loan amount will be adjusted. Like if we go above, are we going to adjust the loan amount? So if they're putting 10% down, is it going to be 10% of the new escalated price? Or is that increase that we went up from the original price going to be paid all in cash? These are the two options, right? And I referenced that here. All the following will be completed by the seller. So now all that's part of your offer. None of this next part is filled out when you make the offer. This is going to be when the seller says, yes, you won, and here's how you won, and we did escalate your offer, and here's why, right? Boom. So here it is. This is filled out later if you actually go to contract and your offer wins the day. Any changes to sale price under this addendum will be effective and binding upon seller and buyer when seller has ratified the contract and this addendum at the following sale price. Notice I put 205,000 in here. Why? Remember in my example, I said we're going to ask for 5,000 in closing costs. Let's say it escalated to our max up here of 200,000, but that max is a net max, right? But we're asking for 5,000 in closing costs. So now our price, ultimate sale price, is going to be 205. I listen to my audio. Why do I have 205,000 here when the net sales price maximum says above, up here, says 200,000? It's because in my example, the buyer is asking for 5,000 in closing cost assistance. That means that the escalation triggers a 200,000 max net sale price, then the actual final gross sale price goes to 205,000. The 200,000 net plus the 5,000 in closing cost assistance, right? Buyer and seller agree to initial these changes. So you're going to go back to the original contract and actually change the contract so it reflects that. Now, here, look at my paragraph here in my explanation. This section has seller note, the offer that was received that initiated the escalation. As noted above, the seller must state that this is a bona fide offer. Again, very difficult to prove, but at least they must sign stating that the bona fide offer was received and that a bona fide and who made that offer. Okay, so here's this is where the seller would fill in the terms of the other offer that escalated, that forced the escalation. So another buyer, Betty Buyer, dated January 20th, 21 through ABC Realty, and Andrea Agent, the selling agent, the sale price was $2,075. That was their offer. Their seller concessions, though, were $8,000, yielding net of $199,500. And so that was their maximum. But you up here said, okay, I'm willing to go to a maximum net of 200. That's why we won the deal. Okay. Buyers made this offer of his or her own volition and discretion, and buyer and seller agreed to hold agent. And here's our little CYA form. And having read and understood the following, we make this part of our offer. It should be part of our offer / eventually contract, but the seller and buyer. Initially, the buyer would sign this here only because that goes with the offer, and only this top portion would be completed. If it does win the day and the escalation was triggered, then the seller would fill all this out, and then the seller would sign, and then you'd also make the changes to the contract. Okay, so that's marked up. That will all be here. Let me show you on Paperless Pipeline where this form will be. It is not on Form Simplicity yet. So if you go to Paperless Pipeline, go to Reference. Once you logged in, go to Reference, and you're going to go to Contract Forms Optional. You see this doc here, FHR Escalation Sale Price Addendum. Click on that. Here is the document. If you want the editable, go ahead and mark Open Original Doc, and you will see the form I just went through, but without all my markings over it. Here's the addendum is made on such and such a date between dated such and such between buyer and seller. The parties agreed the contract is modified as follows. Has all that stuff I just referenced. All right, here's the escalation amount. I had 500 in there. The net sale price, remember, please, net sale price. And in our example, I put 200 in here, right? And that's all that would go in along with a buyer's signature down here. Then, if it is accepted and the escalation kicked in, they would go back and say, okay, we're going to end up at 205 now. And the reason we're at 205 is because this other buyer had a contract dated or an offer dated such and such through ABC Realty and Andrea Agent. The sale price that they offered was 207.5. They were asking for 8,000 in closing costs, yielding a net of 199.5. That 199.5, you agreed up here to go $500 more than the 199.5 up to a maximum net sale price of 200,000, which you did. But that made the price, because you're asking for 5,000 in closing costs, the actual sale price is 205. Okay, this is a lot better because, first of all, we're talking about net figures, very critical. Also, it is forcing, again, no guarantee, the seller to sign saying, yes, I had a bona fide offer that triggered this. It wasn't my brother-in-law or sister-in-law, and so on and so forth. Now, again, is it foolproof? No. Is it better than not having anything there? Yes. So two key components that we were missing on a lot of the other ones we were using were the net concept and this. As always, if you have any questions before you use this form, reach out to Jim or I, but hopefully this will help answer some questions. Hope you guys have a great day. Look for my other classes. I just recorded one on buyer agreeing to pay cash difference up to a certain amount for appraised value for a lower appraisal, and then also one about a closing cost reduction based upon appraisal coming in low. So take a look at those as well if you get a moment. Thanks, guys. As always, reach out to Jim or I if you have questions.